Now, I wanted to get Colonel Roberts on for quite a while, and he's joined us today. Colonel Craig Roberts landed in Vietnam in July of 1965 as a automatic rifleman with Hotel Company, 2nd Battalion, 9th Marines. He served with the Tulsa Police Department for 27 years. In 1985, Roberts transferred to the Army Reserve, 95th Division, and served in various battalion and division assignments, including intelligence. Roberts returned in 99 as Lieutenant Colonel, Infantry Air Operations, 11A5U. His last 12 years were working as a ground liaison officer in the intelligence section of the 138th Tactical Fighter Group. He's the author, best-selling author, New York Times best-selling author, Crosshairs of the Kill Zone, The Medusa File, Doorway to Hell, Disaster in Somalia. Best-selling author of One Shot, One Kill, A Sniper Looks at Dealey Plaza, RifleWarrior.com, one word, helicopter pilot for the Tulsa Police, SWAT team, you name it, investigated Oklahoma City. And now for the next 50 minutes, we're going to cover the waterfront with Colonel Craig Roberts. Craig, just overall, what do you make of the state of the world and so much of what you wrote about 15, 20 years ago coming true?
Well, it's amazing, Alex, because, I had police officers that I worked with that on the department that several of them thought I was absolutely off the deep end and was wearing a tinfoil hat when I went home because I was talking about all of this stuff well in advance. I talked about 9/11 well in advance of what had happened. I wrote about it in the Medusa File, talking about the different types of terrorist targets. When we were working the Oklahoma City bombing, having my intelligence background in the military, being trained as a counterterrorist, we know there's 5 types of terrorist targets. We got mass transportation ground, mass transportation air, a large gathering of people, which we call the Black Sunday or the Super Bowl effect. Then we've got a public building and a private building. In 1993, they blew up the World Trade Center, or tried to, the Ramsey Joseph case. And that was a public or a private building. The next thing we had was Oklahoma City, which is a public building, which is a government building. The next thing we had was the Amtrak derailment out in California or out in Arizona, which was mass transportation ground. And then the next thing I said, we're going to have a major airliner go down, and it wasn't. Just a few months later, we had TW-800 get shot down, and it was shot down. And anybody thinks it was a center fuel tank explosion is living in La La Land. Then we predicted 9/11 as a large gathering of people happening someplace, and it happened. And so we talked about all this stuff, and here 15 years later, I've got these same police officers have come to me and said, do you know any place out in the country we can buy property and move to? Because the whole world's going to do exactly what you said is happening. The economy's going belly up. There's traitors in the White House. The entire world right now is on the brink of total disaster. Now, these are guys that 15 years ago thought I was a lunatic, and now they're coming to me for advice. So, when you have cops doing that, then you better stand by, because there's a lot of people who work in cubicles, and they may listen to the radio, they may watch some TV, but they're more wrapped up in their Saturday and Sunday and Monday sports, and what they're going to do when they get off that night and things like that. And unless they lose their job and get desperate, they don't pay any attention to what's going on in the world. And right now today, we're seeing all kinds of stuff not happening just here, where this country's getting ready to go belly up financially. But and our food supplies are, we're having problems with that. We're having problems with our water supplies. There's all these things that are happening. We're having more major emergencies in the world today than we have ever had before. And, you're looking at tsunamis, volcanoes, earthquakes, hurricanes. Florida alone, last year?
Giant fires, reactors in Nebraska flooding, lying about Fukushima. And you go over all of this. I mean, there's obviously a hand involved. We know they have weather weapons. There's so much to get into with you today, but you mentioned financial collapse. Here's the Financial Times of London today. Dollar seen losing global reserve status. I don't think people realize that America has to be brought down before the world government, which they've openly announced. I mean, think about that. All the publications now saying a world government is the answer to our problems, a world private bank. That's what we always knew was coming. Now it's here.
America has always been the castle on the hill. The rest of the world has always been the peasants outside the castle. They are now storming the castle. They're doing everything they can. We are under siege economically and commercially. And, our borders are wide open, and we've got globalists, in Washington, D.C., in the government right now, from the White House on down. They're doing everything they can to turn this into a global socialist society. And when you don't enforce your own borders, and you send, the legions far afield, so to speak. We've got them in Afghanistan and Iraq and South Korea and who knows where, and there's no one home to watch the chickens, then we are ripe for the picking. And right now, that's where we're at. And they're succeeding in doing what they want and ignoring the law, ignoring the Constitution, ignoring the voices of the people, and they're totally out of control of the people, but they're not out of control of the globalists. The Council of 13, the Council of 33, George Soros, all the rest of those groups that are all intertwined and doing everything they can to bring this country
And
down.
by the way, the CIA, U.S. intelligence, you've told the stories, people in high-level intelligence, they all know this. This is not a secret. And expanding on that, they're creating the crises to then offer the solution. Going through these issues one by one, breaking down the fact that the first World Trade Center, the FBI cooked the bomb, trained the drivers. We're not saying there aren't Muslim extremists. The point is there's an unseen hand. The underwear bomber helped to get on the plane by the U.S. State Department, now on record. Over and over again, in Egypt, they're putting them in. They're using al-Qaeda to go after Gaddafi. This is all admitted. From your research into this, can you explain for newbies what the New World Order, Globalist Council is, what their goal is, and how they use terrorism to take our liberties?
Well, what we call the New World Order is not new at all. It's at least 200 years old, and it goes back to the ancient families of Europe who conspired together to take over the various monarchies of Europe. And you can talk about the Rothschilds and all the rest of them, the Bowers and so on and so forth. But the bottom line is there's a core group of pure evil. And they conspired, decades and decades ago to come up with a plan on how to take over the world. Well, you do it one country at a time or two countries at a time by pitting those two countries against each other. The Rothschild plan said, you support both countries during war and loan them money, and at the end it doesn't matter who wins or loses because they're both in your debt, and debt is power. Now, they turn around and they run the economic systems of countries, and they can control the jobs, they can control the banks, they can control the flow of money, they can control the value of money, they control the gold and the silver and the other precious metals, they control the jewels, and then that is total control. Political control means nothing to these people as long as they're the ones calling the shots. And they've been doing this, for decades and decades. And what they've decided was the way to rule the world is to rule the world by controlling the world's assets. That means the food, the oil, the water, the air we breathe, the weather. Now, today, that's an asset because if you can make it rain, you can make it flood. If you can make it dry, you can make it drought. And so they're able to control these different various things. And right now, the whole thing is being able to take all the countries into third world status and elevate them to first world status. And because you improve those countries, they're all in your debt and they're all very grateful to you and they follow your orders. But to do that, they have to, get this, redistribute the wealth and open the borders of the first world countries. I used to give lectures and I would say, can you name one second world country? There'd be 100 people in the room and no one even knew what I was talking about. What do you mean a second world country? Well, we talk about first world countries and we talk about second world countries. This is what we've been programmed to believe exist. But can anybody name a second world country? And basically, a second world country is what you have when you redistribute the wealth, and that includes the assets and the resources from the first world countries to the third world countries. Open the borders, take from the rich, give to the poor, all the rest of that communist nonsense, and you elevate them to second world status. At the same time, you reduce us to second world status, and then we have a one world order, or what we used to call the New World Order. Everybody's on the same plane except the rulers.
The mega rich, basically creating a collectivist society where the general public is absolutely dependent on them and will do whatever they're told. This is domestication. Now, part of this program is the police state, and we talked about that this morning. Your view of the TSA, the clergy response teams, the spy grids that are going in. And when you get the internal documents that we were sent years ago by law enforcement, none of it even has to do with al-Qaeda. It's all about gun owners, landowners, Ron Paul supporters, people that want to end the New World Order. Expand on that.
Well, it all has to do with control. If if you can't control every element of society, you're not the boss yet. You're not in control yet. So you have to be able to control. One of the things you have to do if you're trying to subjugate a population, you have to disarm it. It doesn't do any good for the peasants to have pitchforks because you might get stuck. So you have to do everything you can to disarm the peasants. And if you can't disarm them, at least reduce their firepower. Just talking about the guns alone, in this country, we had the Gun Control Act of 1968. We've had the Brady bill go through. We've had all of these things that started out back, in the 1930s, you could own a Thompson submachine gun and buy it at any hardware store. Today, you have to get a special license to own an automatic weapon. You can't own anything larger than a certain size caliber, blah, blah, blah. Then, that takes us into this Operation Gunwalker and so on and so forth. If they can't legislate through Congress more gun control than they've already got, what they want to do is they want to regulate us through emergencies, such as, look at all the guns that are going to Mexico and causing all of the havoc below the border with the drug cartels. All the drug cartels are getting these guns out of our gun shops. There's no control over the gun shops, blah, blah, blah. Well, anybody who believes that has never bought a gun. If you go into a gun shop today, you fill out a 2-page form with all your statistics on it, you answer questions, and if you answer any of them wrong, including straw purchaser, that's a felony, and you can go to federal prison.
But we know the vast majority of guns in Mexico, where they have a total gun-banned society, are bought from the military. They're grenade launchers, they're fully auto, they're German. And so the White House 2 years ago started demonizing and said we want to ban multi-sale semi-auto via fiat, via emergency, as you said. Those memos are now public. And now we've caught them because good ATF guys went public, and that they were knowingly helping get them shipped down to Mexico, and then they lied to Congress. I mean, this is incredible.
Oh yeah, and you've got people going in there buying hundreds of guns at a gun dealer, and the gun dealer's screaming, "Hey, this is not right. I shouldn't be doing this." And you got ATF people saying, "No, go ahead and do it. We're in charge. Everything's okay." So the ATF is telling private business to violate the law and become criminals themselves and be felons by violating federal law. They're not on the federal payroll. They're not law enforcement officers. They're not obligated to do this. And when they do it, they're putting themselves in jeopardy. So now if they turn around and say, no, well, we'll file charges on you because of what you already did in the past.
That's right. It's a Whitey Bulger tactic. I mean, it's the government becoming mafia. We'll be right back with Colonel Craig Roberts. We're going to continue to look at Operation Fast and Furious. We'll talk about the TSA. We'll look at what's happening in the Middle East and a lot more. Stay with us.